So good morning, Chief. Thanks for being with us.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
I'm Ted Kirscher, the HR Director for the City of Pensacola. And I want to thank the folks who are joining us online. This is an important moment in the City of Pensacola as we search for a new Chief of Police. So each finalist will participate in a structured interview designed to evaluate how they've handled real leadership challenges in the past, similar challenges that we're facing with the Pensacola Police Department. You'll be allowed a brief introduction, followed by a consistent set of questions and follow-up from our panel. This allows the city and the public to hear how their finalist approaches leadership, problem solving, and accountability. Thank you for being a part of this process and for taking time to our community to stay engaged in this process. I'd first like to ask the interview panel to introduce themselves.
Hey, good morning,
Morning.
Chief. I'm David Stafford. I'm the City Administrator here for the City of Pensacola.
Mark Smith, Chief of Police, Panhandle City Police Department, and we're 100 miles to the east of Pensacola.
Morning, Chief.
I'm Dan Harnett. I am the Fraternal Order of Police rep for Pensacola Police Department.
Excellent.
Good morning. I'm Deborah Little, the General Counsel for the Escambia County Sheriff's Office.
Morning.
Good morning. I'm Cliff Collins, Associate City Administrator.
Morning.
So, Chief, if you would begin by introducing yourself to the panel, briefly describe your background, your current role, and what brings you to this opportunity.
Excellent. Thanks. And good morning. Eric Winstrom. I took a somewhat unorthodox role to land where I am today, and that's started out, I was born in Buffalo, New York, moved to Austin, Texas as a child. My brother went to prison when I was 11 years old for selling cocaine, and that led me to question a lot of things, question the war on drugs, question the role of policing. I saw the impact that his incarceration had on my family, specifically my mother, and the devastation that could be, and I became somewhat of a little bit of a, in my mind, as a young child, a little bit of an activist. And that guided me through grammar school and into high school, and I ended up going to college in New Jersey. I went to Rutgers with the goal of changing the world, and I went to law school. I went to Brooklyn Law School in Brooklyn, New York, with the goal, again, of changing the world, especially the world of criminal justice, which I had these lingering doubts about. While there, I had the opportunity to work at the New York City Police Department's Legal Affairs Bureau and the group of attorneys that fired bad cops, which I thought that was for me. That's what I wanted in the world. And while there, I shared a desk with a young man named John Perry who, like me, went to law school. He became a police officer, and I thought I had met the one great police officer in the country. I was like, wow, I get to team up with the one cool police officer. But as a lot of students know, I thought I knew everything, and I knew just about nothing. And he told me so much about the good and taught me so much of the good in the policing world. And if I really want to make an impact, I should think about doing it from the inside. So I felt the calling, took his advice. I joined the second biggest police department in the country, which is the Chicago Police Department. You might think that it would be the third biggest, but Chicago consistently has more murders than LA and New York combined, so that's why so many police officers. Thinking that I would go and be welcomed for the attorney from New York and get a nice cushy job, and of course that wasn't the case. I went to work midnights in the Robert Taylor homes on the south side of Chicago and really opened my eyes to a world I was not familiar with, a world where abject poverty lived in America, and opened my eyes more about the role of policing, where at the time in Chicago, metrics for success were how many arrests that you made, how many tickets did you write, how many cars did you tow, et cetera. And so still with the mindset of going to change the world, I wanted to become the head of policy or something like that. Well, my career took me to the detective division. I became a child abuse detective. I ended up heading up the child sex crime unit, citywide child sex crime unit, which again, just opened my eyes to all the good that policing can do, the positive impact that policing can have in the community. Promoted up through the ranks. I did enter legal affairs for about 3 years. I worked in legal affairs, a lot of federal civil rights litigation, and then moved on. I actually was promoted to become the commanding officer of policy and procedure. So the one plan in my life that worked out. Headed up briefly the Office of Reform Management as we were placed under a consent decree, promoted up through the ranks further, and became a commander of Detective Division on the northwest side of Chicago. Chicago. I was there during the riots, where I was assigned to the Emergency Operations Center as the overnight commander for about 10 days when we had 70-plus buildings burned to the ground, 300-plus police cars destroyed, 28 murders in 48 hours. It was a very dark time in policing, dark time in Chicago, and so why would I ever want to leave? But the opportunity came in the city of Grand Rapids, where I am now, about 4 years ago, and I've been the chief of police in the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan, second biggest city in Michigan. It's the big city on the west side of the state, about 200,000. Got about 300 plus sworn employees and over 100 civilian employees, and that's it. And just to say the why, as I hear, Pensacola is a special place. There's the personal why. I've been married for over 15 years. I have a 14-year-old son, a 12-year-old daughter. Very excited about the possibility moving down here. As I mentioned last night, you find a lot of people from Chicago, from Buffalo, New York, where I was born, from Michigan, that now reside in Pensacola, but you very rarely find people from Pensacola in that area. The areas that I've lived in the past, this is a special place. I've read the strategic plan. The vision for the city is one, Pensacola is looking to strive to thrive, but for everyone. It wants to do that in an ethical way, in a way that lifts all people up, and it's something that everybody wants to be on a winning team. I see this as going in that direction, and I know the policing is going to be an integral part of that, and I want to be a part of the team. That was a little bit longer than you expected, Ted. Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you, Chief. So now we'll move into the structured interview. We'll ask you a series of questions about your leadership experience. We ask you to answer using specific examples from your career, the situation, what you did, and what happened as a result.
Great.
So our first question is about leading through low morale. Tell us about a time you took over or led a unit where morale was low and trust in leadership was weak.
Well, I'll start with, sorry.
What were the conditions you inherited? What actions did you take? And what changed as a result?
Well, I'll start with the most recent. That's my current position. I took over as chief in Grand Rapids, Michigan, March 7th of 2022. It was still somewhat low point in policing, distrust in policing, still calls to defund or abolish police across the country, certainly in the city. And I knew that I had a lot of work to do. And less than a month into my tenure there, we had a very high-profile officer-involved shooting of a young Congolese refugee named Patrick Lioya. Made national news. The police officer ended up being charged with murder, actually, and it was definitely a low point, I would say, for the police department, probably all-time low point for the Grand Rapids Police Department as far as morale. So I knew that I had to be the hardest working police chief. I knew I had to be the first one there, the last one out the door. I had to do everything I could to support officer wellness, and I had to do the hard things. I had to, when you say lead by example, sometimes it's tough to think of examples of that, but I can think of some. Early on, we were in a room such as this. We had a city council meeting that was shut down by probably 100 or so protesters, and even though I hadn't yet been sworn as a law enforcement officer in the state of Michigan, so I was wearing a suit, but I stood in front of the protesters on camera. It was live streamed for 2.5 hours with the police officers behind me. I stood there and I said, I will stand here for as long as you want your voices to be heard. I will listen to you. And it was 2.5 hours of not the nicest things of me, but that was the first step that the 20 or so officers behind me, protecting the dais, I got feedback from them and say, okay, we don't know you, but you just earned our respect. You took that for 2.5 hours, screamed at for 2.5 hours standing in front of us. So we're going to give you respect. But like trust in the community, trust in the police, there is no magic wand. There's no one thing that a police chief can do, come in and say, hey, trust me. I haven't worked with the Pensacola Police Department for the last 25 years of my career, so I will come in as a stranger, come in and have to prove myself, and that takes time. It takes integrity. It takes doing the right thing over and over, and that's being transparent internally, being transparent with the accountability system. So that's just one example. A few other culture changes I'd make. I work every single 4th of July. I work every December 31st. I work events that officers are going to have their days off canceled for that they don't want to be at. If it's a marathon, you see the chief who's not making overtime. You see the chief on his day off out there directing traffic. We had a large amount of attention on us because we were a battleground state during the recent federal elections, and now President Trump visited 3 times, Vice President Harris visited 2 times. Each time, very large venues. We had as many as 50,000 people. I had more than half of my police department on post. And more than half of them, or a vast majority of them, had their days off canceled, where their chief was out there with them as well. Sometimes it's the little things that matter, so those are some examples.
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned a consent decree. Was that in place when you came on board?
No, and that's the Chicago Police Department. So I was one of 4 sworn members of the Chicago Police leadership team that was on the negotiation team. So for over a year, I sat in a conference room with attorneys from the ACLU, from the Illinois State Attorney General's office, and their experts, and we negotiated it. The largest municipal consent decree in the history of policing at the time. I think it was about 278 pages, and part of my job is to make sure that everything that ended up in that consent decree was actually feasible to make a difference. We didn't agree with everything, but as you know, as an attorney, as part of a negotiation, we went back and forth, and it was not a fun exercise, but during that time, then I took over as commanding officer of the Office of Reform Management, which was a group that was created to implement the consent decree. It's a very long process. Takes a lot of resources, logistics, and then after that I was moved to be commanding officer of policy and procedure to really rewrite. I think
That was going to be my second.
there were 800 standalone policies in the Chicago Police Department, almost all of them public facing, so you can see them online, and we rewrote everything, most, use of force, accountability.
So my question was going to be, what did you learn from that? And then did you implement that into policy? And have you taken that learning process forward with you and everything since then?
So short answer is yes, and I'll just give you one example because I could talk about this for quite a while. I'll just say that when I arrived, one of the first things I did, as a new chief, you should always look at the policies in place. Always look at the training in place. The culture is key to everything. But I looked at the use of force policies in the city of Grand Rapids, and I found them not to be what they could be. So I personally, as a policy guy, rewrote all the use of force policies and some other policies as well. So, and that was knowledge that I got from my time in Chicago.
In regards to the reforms that you brought to these other agencies, can you talk about a few of them that may have caused a negative impact on morale within the officers groups?
Well, change is always a difficult thing, so I'll stick with so much. I'll stick with the Grand Rapids Police Department because I was never the head of the Chicago Police Department, although as the head of policy, I reported to a boss. So talk about the changes that I made, specifically policy changes, let's say. And one of the key to that is, or a very important key to that is communication. We have a very strong union in the Grand Rapids Police Department. I meet with them on a regular basis, at least twice a month. But what I would do is, we have directive staffing. So when we're going to make a change of policy, traditionally it's been, I'm going to share it with the deputy chiefs. I have 8 captains, share it with the captains, get their input. But what I make sure I do, I'm not going to put that policy out until I get the input from the union as well. I want to hear what they have to say. They want to be heard, and there have been specific incidents where they have actually said, you know what, Chief, this is something that we're not comfortable with, and after much consideration, I agreed, and I changed it. So when they're part of the process, even if we end up in a situation where we agree to disagree, I found that we can get through it, and then it's communicating with the officers. Any big changes, any big decisions I've made, I'm always willing, just like I'm willing to get in front of community groups that want to challenge me, always willing to stand in front of a group at roll call and take questions as long as they want to answer them. So communication of the hard things are the keys.
I guess what I'm looking for is like a specific change that you felt was important that you brought that caused a negative impact. Like what?
So here,
were
I'll
those?
bring up. Sure. Yeah, I'll throw out one to you. So something that we recently implemented was like a random view of body-worn camera videos by supervisors. So supervisors are required to view X amount of body-worn camera videos, and essentially the union reviewed the policy and says, hey, Chief, this looks like fishing for issues for us. This looks like fishing for us. And I looked at how it was written and actually said, I think you raise a valid point, and I want to make sure the men and women know they're being treated fairly. This isn't a fishing expedition. And, when we all transitioned to body-worn, I didn't have a body-worn camera when I started. This new generation of officers, I think most of them wouldn't hit the street without the body-worn camera. They're so used to it. But part of the agreement that the union came up with in Grand Rapids about a decade ago when they transitioned to that was this would not be used as a fishing expedition. We have to trust that the supervisors are doing the right thing. So we changed the wording of that policy to get the cooperation of the union, the agreement of the union, and more buy-in from the police officers.
Going back to the dissent decree, you said that you were a panel of 4. So were you legal counsel, or were you in command staff for the Chicago Police Department?
At the time, I was there as commanding officer of the Office of Reform Management. I was a lieutenant at the time. I was an attorney for the superintendent of the police department for 3 years. When I got promoted to lieutenant, I stepped out of that role, but certainly when I was in the negotiation, I was back in that role, along with the general counsel of the police department as well.
Okay. So you viewed it as legal counsel, correct, basically?
Although my utility was, no, that was not my utility there because I sat next to the general counsel. That was her role. My utility was bringing the expertise of a road patrol officer, of a homicide detective, of someone that came up through the ranks and understood the practical implication of these changes that non-police officers were trying to advocate for us. And it was my job to say, hey, you want to implement a foot pursuit policy. Well, you know what? Chasing someone on foot is different from chasing someone in a vehicle, because you're chasing a 2,000-pound projectile, which is inherently dangerous. When you're talking about foot pursuit policy, you want to prohibit officers from chasing someone for stealing a purse because it's not violent. You're going to erode public trust. It doesn't make any sense. So those were the sort of arguments. Well, it's a negotiation, so those were the sort of arguments I had. I had to bring that practical police experience to the table, with a mindset always in the back of my mind. I was a sworn attorney at the time, but my utility there was to be the police officer with police experience.
Thank you.
On the body cam example you gave, did you achieve the desired outcome, and how did you measure it?
Well, yep, and we're there. And how you measure it, we love our data and we keep records. So every supervisor that has a road patrol officer or an officer that is tasked with responding to 911 calls is required to review a minimum of 2 body-worn cameras at least once a pay period, and they document it in our records management system.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
The next question is about holding high performers accountable. Describe a time when one of your strongest or most popular officers violated policy or behaved unethically. What did you do? How did others react? And what was the outcome?
Well, I have a big police department, so I can think of several examples. But I'll say that one of the things that I brought to the Grand Rapids Police Department that I would tend to bring to the City of Pensacola Police Department as well, that I started, one of my first statements was, we are going to embrace a culture of accountability. It's not that the police is going to hammer everybody, and I want you to celebrate this culture of accountability. I want you to be happy that you are held to a higher standard. I want you to know that when you respond to a call and that someone sees you in your uniform, you're going to be identified as a representative of a police department that is the gold standard of policing. So, yes, most recently I had an officer who, upon my review, I determined that he used excessive force. He's also one of my highest performing officers. It's an officer. I'll tell you, I am a very social, gregarious person. I try to connect with the officers. I know just about every one of my officers by first name. I like to learn about their families. I like to support them in a personal way. But when it comes down to it, you're representing the police department, and holding you accountable is benefiting everyone else. A statement that I'm sure the chief has heard before. Nobody is more angry at a bad cop than a good cop, and we're seen as a family, and that's just not internally as an organization. Policing is seen as a family. So when an incident happens in Minneapolis in 2020. Even though I was in Chicago and officers who were here in Pensacola, we are all impacted by that. And so when you're holding officers accountable, good officers, when they see you, even other good officers, which make that mistake, when you're holding officers accountable, that's a positive thing. And a healthy, high-performing police department will see when they're, even if you're holding one of their friends accountable, if it's done in a legitimate way, that will be a positive thing. So this officer, unfortunately, I'm very, very much open to having conversations. I very directly called him and I said, this is what's going to happen. It was a very significant suspension. He did not get terminated, but he was suspended. We sent him for retraining, and he was not happy initially. And fast forward, after all that was through, he asked for a meeting with me and came in and sat down, and it was, Chief, I'm going to do better, and I hope you don't hold this against me, and I think you treated me very fairly. And so long as you keep the legitimacy, and that's internal and external, you have to have that legitimacy with the public. You owe that to the public. You owe it to your police officers, too.
Okay. Next question. Thank you, Chief. Our next question is about managing a public crisis. Tell us about a time your department faced a major public controversy, a misconduct allegation, or negative media attention. What actions did you take internally and externally, and how did trust change afterwards?
I'll give you the biggest example from when I've been a chief. There's plenty in Chicago to discuss in my role there, but as I mentioned, I was hired March 7th of 2022. On April 4th, we had an officer-involved shooting, which made national headlines. And the area that I'm in West Michigan had a different culture than I was used to. And one of the things was that the other leaders in the community in policing expressed to me was that no video is released until the investigation is done. I viewed video, which I thought was going to be very controversial, which was going to be a concern to the community. And from my experiences in Chicago of being put in situations where the department withheld body-worn camera video, let's say, that turned into, regardless of the outcome of the investigation, it turned into a case of the cover-up was worse than a crime allegation of you knew that you had this video, you had to release it. So I looked at this video and I immediately contacted the prosecutor of the county who was responsible for the final investigation, and I said, well, I need to release this video. And there was some back and forth. He said, you know what, Eric, we, in West Michigan, I know you're from Chicago, in West Michigan, it's going to take me about 2 months to complete this investigation. I want you to hold the video. And essentially, I told him bluntly, I said, unless you get a judge to order me to hold the video, I will not hold the video. This isn't the right thing to do. They're not going to be marching down to rioting in front of the prosecutor's office. They're going to be coming to the police department. The city owes this. We owe the city this transparency. And so days after this shooting, I held a press conference. I released the video. I did not come to a conclusion of law or policy. I said that on balance, I viewed this. I knew it was going to be controversial, and I think the city, the people of the city of Grand Rapids deserve that transparency. On balance, it was important for them to see this use of force. And I knew what was to come. I had to prepare for the protests, which were coming. I have a lot of experience. That part of my role as attorney in the Chicago Police Department was to manage large protests as a legal advisor. So I've supervised hundreds, and I knew various tactics, and I knew that our job was to facilitate the First Amendment rights of individuals that were essentially protesting us. And that's a tough thing to ask a police department to do. Get out there, work under these difficult conditions. You're going to have your day off canceled. And by the way, everyone you encounter is going to scream at you and tell you how much they hate you. So a lot of communication with the men and women of the police department. There's a lot of putting myself out there and letting them know I'm going to lead by example and be out there with you. And we made it through, and we were a better police department, a better city for it.
Let me ask a follow-up question. What did you learn from that incident, and would you handle it differently?
Would I handle the exact same way? I learned that I'll tell you what I've learned in the past, which informed me how to handle that. Number one, I mentioned the release of video. When I was in Chicago, we had an incident. A young man named Laquan McDonald was shot 16 times by a police officer. The mayor's office in the city of Chicago decided to hold that video for 13 months until a judge ordered it released. By then, nothing had happened with the investigation. The police officer was even still working on the books. He ended up being charged with murder after that. Protests, there was weeks of protests. Fortunately, did not devolve into riots, but I knew that whole, like I said, the potential for being accused of covering up something would take what would be a problematic incident and make it worse. So when I saw incident that happened in Grand Rapids, I knew I couldn't make that any better. My role as a chief was to make sure I didn't make it any worse for the city. So I've seen it handled worse. One of the things I've seen handled poorly too was protests. When I first started supervising as a legal advisor in protests, it was during the Occupy Wall Street movement. So there's a large amount of protests there. There were protests around election time. There was protests, Black Lives Matter protests. And we evolved as an agency to originally put up that line of officers, sometimes very defiant with shields, to say, no, you are not going down the street, to be more open-minded and say, okay, maybe we can facilitate closing this street and come to a more peaceful conclusion. So one of the things I say to my officers, no matter what the protest is, go out there with the mindset of this is a pro-police protest. Go out there and police like they are just praising you and saying, we love the police department, we love you. Keep that in your mind the entire time, and you will do a fine job facilitating the rights.
In regards to those shootings, how did you weigh the due process rights of the officer versus the impact to the public?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of discussion with our Department of Labor Affairs, with the city attorney, et cetera. So, and that officer ended up being charged with murder. However, it went to. Go ahead.
Looking more for like internally within the groups of officers that were there, like that saw this happen.
Well, we certainly have a process in place for. As chief, and this isn't counting my time in Chicago as in Chicago on the overnight shift, there was always a member of command staff that was designated to be in charge overnight while the main boss, slept. He couldn't be there. A lot of things happening. So I dealt with a lot of officer-involved shooting investigations there, SWAT incidents, et cetera. In the city of Grand Rapids, I have 11. I've supervised 11 now officer-involved shootings, and we have a very robust process in place. Part of that is obviously you want to separate the officers, the shooting officers, witness officers for the integrity of the investigation, but immediately the union's called and they are assigned a union rep to be with them the entire time. That union rep contacts legal attorneys. Oftentimes, if it's in the middle of the night, I'll get there to the scene and the union's attorney has beat me there. So we always make sure that they're afforded all of their union protections, all of their legal protections, and make sure that they're treated well. Yeah, and that includes the officer wellness aspect of it, the medical aspect of it, because obviously, as you know, in officer-involved shootings, you have the potential for physical injury, but also, not everybody's a 23-year-old marathon runner. You have incidents of heart issues or complications, anxiety attacks, et cetera. So making sure that those officers are immediately afforded the ability to get that medical care that they need is important. So all goes in with trust that know that you're going to be treated well, because we ask a lot of our officers, and that was one incident I talked about, the first officer-involved shooting, but the next 10 were very different, and potential murders of police officers. And when I'm asking the officers to go out there and put themselves in these situations, they need to know that the chief is going to treat them fair, that their due process rights are going to be protected, that they're going to be treated well, make sure that they are right in the head before they're asked to come back to work. So all those things are very important to maintaining the trust of the police department.
All right, thank you, Chief. Our next question relates to delivering public safety results. Give us an example of a time you were responsible for reducing violent crime, gang activity, or serious public safety problems. What strategy did you use, and what were the results?
I'd say 2022, so we're early on in my tenure there, we had a spike in homicides in the city of Grand Rapids in the summer. And what I recognized was that we were shorthanded. We had issues with recruitment and retention. And we were working on that. We've turned the corner on that. But at the time, there was a call, what is the question was always, Chief, what are you doing about these murders? What are you doing about these young people getting shot? And there's a lot to do there. We're out solving these crimes. We're out active patrolling the crimes. We're out responding to the crimes. But my question back to the community is, this is what we're doing. We're out there, our officers are working very hard, putting the time in. What's everybody else doing? And talking to my boss, who we have a weak mayor form of government, so I report to the city manager. I said, look, we're going to do our jobs. We're going to put handcuffs on the right people. We're going to be a constant presence in the community. But there's more capacity here for others. Can we do a whole of city government approach to this incident? Because we have young people in our communities getting struck by bullets. And fortunately, I got buy-in from the whole community. Also, you have the tendency that when you, as a police chief, you can look at data and you can create a heat map. You can say, well, this pocket right here is where the shootings are happening, so this is where I'm going to deploy my resources. The worry is that you become an occupying army, that it turns into an us and against them situation where because you're saturating the area, you're not necessarily stopping people that are involved in crime, you're just stopping people that live there and that are good community members and now have some resentment towards the potential over-policing. So what I did was twofold. Number one was I sent officers down literally on foot, door to door, knocking in the specific geographic area where we saw young people getting shot, and they informed all the residents that would answer the door, and they knocked on every door twice. This is what we're seeing. This is the data. Young people here have a 47 times more chance of being shot than someone where Eric Winstrom lives. I live in the city. I live in the northeast side of town. You're going to see more police officers here. We're having a community meeting on this date. We want to hear your input. What do you want to see from the police? And come to this community meeting because the whole city is going to be there. And what we did in a room like this, we invited all the neighbors. Of course, the police leadership was there, but also every director of every department in the city came. And there were questions like, can you fix the street light at this street because this is where gang members are hanging out? Can you clean up the basketball courts here because they're unusable for our children? Can you extend library programs so the young people have more to do? We brought faith leaders in, everybody. I just essentially announced the police are going to do our job. We're going to put the handcuffs on the right people. What's everybody else going to do? And we've seen a dramatic drop in crime. I never want to take credit for the drop in crime because the next shooting that happens, it's, what the police do, how come the police didn't stop this? So a dramatic drop in crime, not just from the fantastic work by the police officers, but fantastic investigative skills by the detectives, but also because the whole community stood up and said, all right, we're going to do this together.
Good question. Proximity-wise, where are you guys located in relation to your sheriff's department in that
Sheriff's
area?
Department is within city limits.
So do you have relationship, partnership, operations? Do you do any?
So we're the big city in the region, and the Sheriff's Department will be the second biggest law enforcement agency. She has about 250 road patrol officers. I have about 320 or so, 310, 320. So for example, when one of the big events we had, now President Trump had his first rally after the RNC, so it was the first rally after the assassination attempt in Butler, was in Grand Rapids. Also, the last event of his election was in Grand Rapids at our arena there, which seats about 13,000. We had between 40 and 50,000 people show up. Just looking at a map and talking to, I don't know how often, some of you I'm sure have worked with the Secret Service before. The Secret Service does a fantastic job, but they are hamstrung by the election organizations will call them and say, we're going to be in Grand Rapids on Friday, and that'll be on Wednesday. And they would call and say, Eric, you got 48 hours. And they're going to be there whether we're ready or not. So my first call is to the sheriff and say, hey, I got 300, you got 200. How many can you give me? What can we do? And that goes both ways because we know, not only big events like that, but as you know, crime does not stop. Crime does not recognize borders. Police issues don't recognize borders. So whatever it is, we have each other's back. And that goes for our smaller suburban departments as well that surround us. We meet minimum once a month, but the sheriff and I talk constantly all the time. We do not have a lockup facility. We don't have a jail. So our officers are there every day processing and interacting. So we also, much like the Pensacola Police Department, we share a real-time crime center with our sheriff because we know that we're stronger together, and so we provide analysts for that center and a constant presence there.
So is it your intention that, I'm sorry. Do you intend to expand upon? Are you familiar at all with the relationship currently with the Escambia County Sheriff's Office?
I've met some of the employees there. I'm familiar with the relationship, and I think that there's definitely capacity to improve the relationship. I know there's a lot of former Pensacola police officers that are there, and I think that's a great foundation for that relationship. But it is such an important relationship, and we can do so much more together. We're stronger together. So that would be a key priority, yes.
Thank you.
Federal task force, do you use them in Grand Rapids?
We do. We have task force with the U.S. Marshals, we have ATF, we have DEA, and we have FBI. And we have an FBI agent embedded with us, 2 U.S. Marshals embedded with us. We have an officer embedded with the ATF in their office, as well as the DEA. Yeah, very helpful, very, very good. As you know, Chief, they have a lot of resources that municipal police departments just don't have. We are fortunate at our location. We have a U.S. Attorney for the Western District is just down the block from us. So we have a lot of support, a lot of partnerships going on there. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Chief, thanks. Our next question is about budget constraints and leading through them. Tell us about a time you had to manage a department during a budget shortfall or resource crisis. What trade-offs did you make, and how did you maintain performance and morale?
Well, and I'll just stick with when I'm chief, because Chicago has gone through some serious ups and downs, and even when I was in the administration, I was part of the budget committee there. But as chief in the city of Grand Rapids, fortunately, we haven't had things such as layoffs. I know in 2007, the Grand Rapids Police Department laid off a group of officers, many of which have come back, fortunately, and tell the stories about those dark times. But I haven't faced that. But when you look at it, any police department, an overwhelming majority of the budget is personnel related. So when you're talking about shortages of money, there's really only so much capacity there unless you're talking about reducing the size of the police department. That has not been for Grand Rapids, which is a city that used to have about 400 police officers. When I inherited it, it was down to 260. So reducing police officers was never an option, never a feasibility for the safety of the city, quite the opposite. But there have been, obviously, there's not an endless supply of money, and I'm a good steward of finances. So every year when we go through the budget, there have been asks that I knew we're not getting, and some of the ways to deal with that have reduced the number of take-home cars. Cars are expensive, gas is expensive. If it's outside of the scope of the collective bargaining agreement, that sacrifice might need to be made. Another thing is we transition, much like I believe most of the Pensacola police officers here, wear outer vests. They're better for the back. Storing some of the equipment, such as taser or other heavy items on an outer vest is helpful, but they are not cheap. So what we did a process where over time we did that over 2 budget processes. And how to get through that, my message is always been help is on the way. Number one is the officers know that I'm going to be the advocate down at City Hall. I'm going to make the strongest case possible. I always invite my leadership team every year. They're required to come present their wants, their needs, and so that I can make the best case to the city manager and the city commission. And my message is always help is on the way. We're going to get what we need. Having been a police officer myself for a very long time, I know this is vital, and I can make those strong arguments from experience. But there's not an endless supply of money. I recognize that, and the message to police officers are always, I'm advocating, help is on the way, we're going to get there.
Okay. Ted,
Yes.
if I may. One question, what's the source of your revenue for the police department in Grand Rapids?
The general fund. We have an income tax in the city of Grand Rapids. I don't suggest that here.
No. So it's mainly income tax driven, not ad valorem, like property taxes?
Right. Well, there's property taxes as well, but because I think it's about it is a 1% income tax for residents, 0.5% for non-residents, so a significant amount there. Go ahead.
And then on the prioritization, obviously, we hear a lot about wants and needs. We're in a position where sometimes even needs don't get funded. What's your own process for prioritizing within needs? What are the most important? Is that
personnel needs, number one. And then current equipment, number 2, vital equipment, number 3, and then what equipment do we, or technology can we still get by with? Example of that, we recently, the last budget, and it's now on the road, we have a brand new armored vehicle. We had a 2007 armored vehicle, which appeared to be kind of rusty and looked not very attractive, but as I came in and said, it's just, we don't have that $300,000 budget in this year. Can we make it work another year? And we put, $10,000 or $15,000 into repairs for it, and we kept it going. But when you need an armored vehicle, you really need an armored vehicle. So it was something that we were the only one in the region that had one, and we knew that we needed to keep it. We even responded as far away as the mass shooting at the Michigan State University, which was, about an hour drive for my SWAT team, but they responded there because resources in our part of the region are thin. Another example of that is we have a bomb team. It's very important especially because of the election season, which is always a big deal for us. We would be utilizing State Police bomb team, which is a very far away, and bomb robots are not cheap. And I paid for repairs for a very expensive bomb robot for the first couple years that I was there because we were just able to push it down the road. Now we've acquired a new one with time.
Thank you.
In regards to one of the unseen budget issues that the departments have, one would be turnover. What would you say has been the turnover and the cost to the agency in the time that you've been the chief of police?
Well, when I started, because it was such a low point, we had people leaving to other agencies. We have turned that around 180 degrees, where we are now the destination police department, even so much as I had one officer that left that asked if he could come back. So we have very little attrition at this point in time. We're fortunate we have a key employee incentive program, a 5-year extension of pension program, which most of our officers take advantage of and stay, which is great because that hiring push in the 90s, which really was across the country, put us in a situation where there was a very large group of institutional knowledge and great police officers that were eligible to leave that could have left. So that was my biggest challenge as chief when I got there, was recruitment and retention. So that's definitely been a huge focus of mine.
What would you say is your percentage of turnover since you took the position of chief?
Well, I'll say that I've hired over 30% of my police department myself. Now, having said that, I inherited a police department with 260 officers, and we're up to about 320 or so right now. So the increase in the police department is a part of that, but I've probably had, 40 maybe individuals retire. Yeah, and a couple leave. I had one leave to be an air marshal, a couple leave to the private sector, like Axon and things like that, that had their time in but could have stayed longer.
How many terminations?
2.
All right, thanks, Chief. Our next question is about using data to drive policing. Describe how you've used data to measure success and guide decision-making in your department. What metrics do you rely on to understand public safety and the performance of your organization? And how did that data change what you did?
Well, I talked a little bit about crime data. It's always very important. Crime data and data from community sentiment are like the two biggest important things for a police chief. Crime data for me, we have a public-facing data dashboard. It really benefits twofold. Number one, it's the right thing to do to inform the public of what's going on, and number two, it actually reduces our number of public records requests when individuals who are interested or the media can just go online and look and get that information in real time. So that's very helpful. As far as crime data goes, give you numerous examples, but I'll stick with one. We had a very large spike, as happened across a lot of the country in 2022 and a little bit in 23 of auto theft, driven in large part by a social media craze of that individuals on social media realized that from about 2010 to about 2021, Kias and Hyundais had reduced the level of security in their ignition systems. So if you had a USB cord and a flathead screwdriver, you could steal a Kia or Hyundai in about 90 seconds. And that was a big deal for us because it was individuals as young as 12 stealing these vehicles. Obviously, they haven't gone through driver's ed, and they would videotape themselves doing stunts and things, extremely dangerous. And part of the data was where we were covering these vehicles, where these vehicles being dumped, and we, would identify through fingerprints one young person who was probably responsible and see that 7 vehicles through our data were also dumped within a block from this young person's house, and we knew that was a young person that we had to focus on to make sure that was the end of their career in crime. So that's one example. I do like data very much. It's very helpful, but you can't just rely on that. I gave the example of we use a risk terrain modeling program, which essentially put all the data in the computer crime map, and it could say, hey, this this addressed here might be a problem, and we look at it, but you have to get the human input too. Like we've had cases where this coffee shop must be a hub for crime. The AI is telling us that this is the problem, and then we realize it's not. What it is they have free Wi-Fi, which extends, a large area, and individuals are using that Wi-Fi while they're selling drugs outside, something like that. So we haven't got to the point where data is everything, but it's certainly very helpful.
I have a question. You said that crime data, and then the other one was human.
Community sentiment,
Community
I would say.
sentiment.
If I was just looking at two things for
How do you
how am
measure?
I doing, it's tough. Community sentiment. So you get surveys. The problem with policing is maybe I'm preaching to the choir here, but if you hold a community forum about policing, if you ask for input about policing, a lot of times you get two groups of people. You get police cheerleaders and people who really don't like the police. And so you're missing that 90% middle of the community that just kind of wants to pay taxes and get good public service and be left alone. So if you hold a town hall meeting, say, hey, we're going to, especially after a high-profile police incident, everybody's invited to City Hall today. Chief's going to be there. We're going to talk about policing. We've done that many times, and it's a lot of times I could say I can name everybody in the room, and it's the same people, it's the same activists that have certain opinions, or other times you'll get a whole group of people that just want to praise the police. So it's tough. It's difficult to get people engaged, the community engaged. There are other ways that I have not piloted, but I know there's companies out there which will actually take surveys with 911 calls. It'll take every 911 call that comes into a dispatch center, except for they don't do it for domestics. They will wait something like a half hour and then send a text message to the person, how was your police service? You're not always getting great feedback for that sort of if you're calling the police. Sometimes you do, but so it's a challenge. Best success that I've had is get out in organic situations, not come meet the chief and yell at me about police stuff, or come meet the chief and tell me how great the police department is. It's getting invited to. I spent a lot of time in churches. Have a real strong connection to our faith-based community, and if people are going to church and they're there to go to church, and then they happen, hey, the chief of police is here, you want to talk to him after the fact. They're not there to talk to me. They're there because they went to church, and now they get an opportunity to talk to me as well. So I spent a lot of time on the street. I respond to every shooting. I know there's far fewer here, but every shooting, certainly every homicide, I'm on the street and I make a point. I'm not a detective anymore, so I'm not out there actively trying to solve the shooting. My role there is more support the personnel there, and then also connect with the neighbors. Just walk. A lot of times you'll see a lot of people come out and stand in the driveway, stand on their porch, and I will make the round all around the area within sight of that scene, have those conversations. What's going on in your community? What's what can we be doing better, et cetera. So those organic conversations are most helpful.
I can imagine that. This is just me. I don't know very much about Grand Rapids, but I would imagine the politics and the culture is probably really different than Pensacola. And I think the concern with many locals is about somebody that it's not from the area, it's not homegrown, coming in or whatever, and you've got a lot of experience. And maybe you should frame this answering the last question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you now. How is that going to translate to a community like Pensacola? You said we're a special place, but how do you think that culturally and politically that a lot of the places you've been your training translates here?
Well, believe it or not, actually, the city of Chicago and the city of Grand Rapids are vastly different culturally. And so as far as success of how I can come in with success, you have to come in humbly. I'm not going to come in the police department. I'm from wherever, and I know better, so this is the way we're going to do things. There are a lot of things culturally in the city of Grand Rapids, which were way better than the Chicago Police Department. So I don't have a 90-day plan of I'm going to come in, I'm going to change XYZ. My 90-day plan is I'm going to learn everything I can about the city and about the police department, and I am all ready to embrace those positive culture differences and certainly learn about it and celebrate those positive things. I've been through it before. I know that it's extra work for an outsider to put the time in, and I know you're not going to find anybody that works harder than me, certainly, but I know what the challenge is ahead of me, and I'm certainly up for the task, otherwise I wouldn't be here. Thank you.
Can I move slightly off the question?
Sure. Speak into the microphone, please.
The equivalency of training, have you researched that as far as obtaining your standards in Florida?
I have, and not to the point where I've applied or anything. I went to the same process in Michigan. It took me about 6 weeks there. I had to take about a week course and certainly take a written test to get through it. But I know that there's no automatic reciprocity, and I know there'll be some hoops to jump through. And certainly, I see myself as a pretty good student, and I don't have any strong concerns about it.
Okay. And are you a member of the Michigan Bar?
I'm not, no. No, I didn't transfer over. In fact, I went inactive, and I just actually switched my status to retired status, so I don't have any intention of practicing law down here.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Hartman has a question.
Describe a time when your desired change to a promotional issue, evaluation, or personnel process conflicted with existing collective bargaining agreements or written policy. How did you handle the conflict, and what steps did you take to ensure both organizational goals and contractual obligations?
I like the current process we have. I have not had any conflict with my union about promotional processes. I have what I'm told is in modern history the lowest number of grievances of any police chief in my current situation. So I'll have to go back to the city of Chicago. In the city of Chicago, when I was in the superintendent's office there, they have a process for promotion where 80% of they would promote large classes. For example, when I was promoted to sergeant, I think I was promoted with about 100 other individuals promoted as sergeant. So their union rules are that 80% of that promotion was directly off a rank order test list. 20% of that promotion was what is called merit, and that's at the superintendent's discretion. The superintendent at the time that I worked for came to me and said, I have a project for you. I want you to research how can we make this more fair, because there was the superintendent can pick whoever he wants for whatever reason. And of course, the reputation of Chicago going back not too many years is one of look out for cronyism, nepotism, whose cousin is this, somebody sent it was, and it was something that I observed was an issue coming in as an outsider from, moving from New York to Chicago. A lot of people in Chicago had relatives in the police department, had relatives in city government, and there was a lot of that sort of lack of integrity as far as promotions go. So I spent a lot of time researching, reached out across the country for different versions of what it looks like, and eventually, for a time, actually, my the last boss that promoted me, Charlie Beck, who had been the chief in L.A., actually eliminated it altogether and said, this is not a fair process. We're going over the rank order list. So it was inconsistent with collective bargaining agreements. It was inconsistent with common sense, and the union certainly was trying to fight it, but they were just unable to. So it was good to finally work for someone who said, this is not a fair process. We're going to eliminate it altogether.
All right, now, thank you, Chief. Now we're time to your closing statement. Is there anything about your leadership experience or approach that you believe uniquely prepares you to lead the Pensacola Police Department at this moment?
I'll say this. I have a ton of experience going back to Chicago. I mentioned the riots. I mentioned the hundreds of homicides I've investigated, the consent decree negotiations, all these things, everything that I've been through in Grand Rapids. I have been through a ton of challenges. I am not bringing any of those challenges with me to Pensacola. I am only bringing the experience that I've had dealing with those challenges, and I think that no matter what the city is, that experience translates very well. Combine that with the fact that I am ensuring you will not find a harder working police chief that I think that it certainly does uniquely qualify me for this.
Very good.
Is that my, okay, all right.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.